This is the Scottish Club Rugby Podcast. The Scottish Club Rugby Podcast. With Stuart Cameron and Dale Clancy.
Hello and welcome to the 11th edition of the Scottish Club Rugby Podcast, and the three unbeaten teams across the 5 divisions have gone another week without being defeated. That's Garnock from National 4. They march on as the only team still with a 100% record, including try-bonus points, with another victory at the weekend, making it 8 out of 8 for them. And Ayr and Orkney, the only other clubs yet to taste defeat. Well, join me as always is Dale Clancy, and in today's show we'll be glancing back at last Saturday's results, taking a look at what's in store this Saturday with another full programme of 25 matches set to go ahead with a reasonable weather forecast predicted. And as always, we begin with the Premiership. Let's have a look. Curry 40, Selkirk 36, Enbrackies 57, Jed Forest 14, Glasgow Hawks 15, Hawick 36, Kelso 45, Musselburgh 12 and Marr 45, Heriots Blues 34. So a few talking points there. First of all, the top 2 teams in the league, Hawick and Marr, both won with bonus points.
Yeah, Marr's game against Heriots a little bit closer. Obviously just 11 points between them, high scoring through and through. But, you know, Marr were wanting to try and steady the ship and make sure that they got a bit of form back in after a sticky couple of weeks. And yeah, they've certainly done that against a difficult Heriots side. You look at some of the results there, you know, you've obviously touched on the Hawick game. Again, another accomplished performance from them on the road. They find it difficult to go to Glasgow Hawks, so, you know, they put in a really good performance there. But one bolt from the Blues certainly is that Kelso result is phenomenal.
Extraordinary. It was at 38-0 at half-time. No one saw that coming, particularly as, Musselburgh had beaten Marr at Marr the week before. Unfortunately for Kelso, not the Bill McLaren shield. We had Allan Tate on commentary. He thought Kelso were going to pick up the shield. No, it doesn't work like that. No, they have to defend it for 4 home matches first of all. But huge result and a huge boost for the club. And, we can't really explain that, can we?
No, I think, you know, Musselburgh have been scoring loads of tries. Obviously that great result against Marr as well. Running Hawick close, and they've just been a completely different team this year. But they must have pressed the kind of reset button and went back to the season before, because that's, you know, it's an absolute tanking from Kelso. But we always say it's difficult to go to Poynter. You know, they're a team that's went up from National 1, but they're a difficult side. A lot of good players in the Kelso squad, and you know, obviously they started really well in that game and took it away from Musselburgh, and then, you know, probably at that point in that fixture that they've just went, look, we're not going to win it, and it becomes a bit of a one-horse race. But, you know, it's a great result for Kelso, and it will certainly give them some confidence going forward.
And 2 vital bonus points for Selkirk as well. They lost 40-36 at Maleny Park at Curry. Certainly that would be seen, I think, by many in the Borders as an improvement, because we don't tend to get good results from Borders teams apart from Hawick at Maleny Park. And they were 19-0, so they did their old trick of going down 19-20 points or whatever. First of all, had to play catch-up, and when you're playing catch-up against Curry, that's not easy.
No, it's not, but, you know, it is a positive result, you know, running Curry close away from home. You know, I don't know if they're vital 2 points. I think they'll be welcomed 2 points, because obviously you look at the other result in the league as well. Enbrackies picking up a really big win at Jed Forest, you know, quite tight at the start, and then Enbrackies pulled away. But Selkirk will be buoyant in the fact that they've been able to put in a performance. And again, they're a team that have got a lot of good players in that squad, and even when you look at the Selkirk A side as well, they do have some players in that squad that can step up. You know, young players like Cam Eason, who's, you know, finding it hard to get back into the first team after being away on holiday. So, you know, they've got players that can certainly fill in. But, you know, players like Grant Sutty, you know, those types of players are brilliant for Selkirk. So obviously playing well at the weekend, but again, just coming off second best.
And they seem to be improving, certainly. I mean, we mentioned them as a developing side this season. Well, we're now into the second half, and we can see that, you know, the progress that's being made.
Yeah, I think, you know, obviously a change of coach is always going to bring a change in fortunes and playing style, and it's obviously just taking a little bit longer to kind of settle at Philippock, but I think they're stepping in the right direction. A lot of good young players and a lot of experienced players in there as well. I think Ross Nixon's maybe about 56 now, but, you know, he's still pulling on the jersey and putting in a reasonably good shift as well. So, you know, it's got a decent blend at Philippock. It's just some results haven't went their way so far this season. Obviously 2 victories so far. Almost a third against Curry on the road, which would have been a really good result, but again, second best, and they're just building up a little bit of a cushion now to Jed Forest below them.
Let's have a look at that league table then. In the Premiership, Hawick at the top, 42 points. Marr in second spot on 41, so it couldn't be closer. Edinburgh Accies now back up into third position after that win over Jed Forest, 34 points for them. Curry in fourth, they go back into the top four, 32 for them. Musselburgh, no points for them at the weekend, very, very surprising, particularly for a team that before that game had the most bonus points of any other in the league, but they're on 29 still. Heriot's Blues now drop out of the top 5 into the bottom half. They're on 27. Kelso right on their heels with 25 points now. Glasgow Hawks fall to 8th after that loss at home to Hawick. They're on 21. Selkirk have 15 and Jed Forest have 3. Well, this week 4 of the 5 games in the Premiership kicking off at 3 o'clock. Heriot's Blues versus Kelso, the only game starting at 2 o'clock. Let's start with the big one at Mansfield Park. That's Hawick against Marr, first against second. We're going to hear from both head coaches, starting with the Greens' Matty Douglas and then Marr's Kenny Diffenthal.
It's a big week for us as a squad, heading into what is a top of the table clash, a point separating us and Marr at the top, and both teams are in a good bit of form at the minute, so looking at it, it looks like it'll be a feisty encounter. We're coming off the back of a really positive result at Hawks last week. I thought in terms of complete performance it was up there with one of the best this season. I just thought in terms of the way we dealt with pressure and the way we stamped our authority on the game, I thought we had in attack we were quick and effective, getting to an edge and then looking to try and punch holes through the middle, and again a lot of players really putting in some top class performances, and we're starting to get a bit of consistency in selection, which always helps. But on the flip side, we've got a lot of players who are still knocking at the door, and this week at training there's just been that kind of added extra energy in there. Probably looking at it, there's a bit of a top of the table clash, but also a little bit in the back of our minds how we performed at Marr earlier in the season. We've touched a little bit on that there's a little bit unfinished business there. Look, we've worked extremely hard this week, and Marr are a quality side. We've got a lot of respect for them, and we've had a lot of top class battles in the past couple of seasons. So look, we know how good they are. We know what they're like in terms of their attack and their defence, and they're a tough side to break down. So we're not taking it lightly. As I said, we've had that extra edge at training this week, and we're just looking to implement our game plan and see where we're at. We've got a tough couple of fixtures coming up in the next couple of weeks, so I think this Saturday is probably a marker for us in terms of where we really kick on this season. So team news, Morgan Tate will miss out this week due to a fractured finger that he done up at Hawks, but apart from that we've got a full squad to pick from, so it looks like it'll be a tasty encounter, and we'll certainly be looking forward to welcoming Marr to Mansfield at the weekend.
Great to get the bounce back last weekend after the disappointment against Musselburgh. One disappointment though was our ill discipline. So spoken about that this week and try to tighten up on that. It's a big driving force in what I do is our discipline, and that was disappointing last weekend, but we fixed that. We all know what a big challenge it is to go to Hawick and try and come away with the win. So the boys have so far prepped reasonably well, and we'll continue to do that and head to Hawick trying to play a good brand of rugby and come away with the win. We all know how tough it's going to be, but it's a top of the table clash, so I'm sure everybody will be up for it. Hopefully we can stop them at source and come away with the win.
It's a word we hear a lot from players and coaches, discipline, and they always say, we'll fix it. They never do though, do they?
No, well, it's difficult to, especially in these encounters. Marr are obviously speaking about the game against Heriot's and a bit disappointed in their discipline, but when you're playing competitive teams, that you have to live on the edge, and it can be things like, especially now with high challenges and high tackles, it's difficult to maintain that consistency, but that's sometimes the difference between two sides. Although it's not always. You look at the discipline for Hawick in their Premiership final last year, and they still went on to win. So, it's not the be-all and end-all, but obviously it does help if you can keep all 15 guys in the park, and if also you're not giving away needless penalties, trusting your defence so that you can make sure that you can, keep pressure on in the opposition's half instead of relinquishing that and then playing back and back towards your own line. But it's interesting there. I think obviously Kenny Diffenthal mentioning stopping Hawick at source and is definitely what you need to do. You cannot let them get up any momentum and head of steam, especially at Mansfield, because they're two really big packs. It's going to be a physical encounter between both sides, but they've both got a little bit of X factor in behind the scrum as well, which is I remember covering the game last year and it was a bit of a wet blanket, to be fair, because Marr had almost threatened throughout the whole season to play well, and then just fell really flat when they came to Mansfield. They were really poor, but this seems like a little bit of a different encounter. Obviously the game Marr against Curry, which was at Troon, that was at Fullerton. That was a really tasty encounter, and I think this will be of the same ilk. So an intriguing game at the top of the table.
And the Hawick captain Sean Muir said after the Hawks game last week that they have a score to settle as they were embarrassed by Marr. Direct quote there from Sean Muir in all aspects of the game at Fullerton Park. So they're going to be up for it. Yeah,
they definitely are. I think when we were speaking about that game before, I think we'd mentioned that we wouldn't have been surprised if Hawick did go on the road and get defeated, which is what happened in the end. But it's almost been that little jolt for Hawick. They've went on an undefeated run last year, obviously had a hugely successful season, and then came into this year. And there's always the danger that you get a bit of complacency. But I think that it wasn't complacency that set in. I think Marr raised their level. They were better than Hawick on the day, and Hawick have then went, look, we don't want to be knocked off our perch. They've came back, really good performances since then. They've looked really, really solid. So again, I think they go into this one with home advantage.
And Hawick defending their home record, of course. No defeat there since October 2019, and remember Marr took the Bill McLaren shield off them earlier in the season, but have since lost it to Musselburgh, as we mentioned earlier, and they're now in possession of the trophy, which they'll defend that on Saturday. More on that in a moment, but whoever wins this will top the table.
Yeah, and I think it gives the teams a little bit of a confidence boost as well, because it's a big one out of the road. We always talk about at the turn and eyeing up the next fixtures. Obviously this Marr game's come a bit quicker in the season than perhaps the other ones that are going to come down the road. I think Hawick perhaps have almost the better run of fixtures. I know they've got the 3 away games at the end, but they play those big 2 games that we mentioned before pretty early on. Marr have to wait a little bit before they obviously welcome play Curry again. But this is a huge game at the top of the table, because it's about trying to secure that home semi-final certainly, and then get advantage for the home final. So at the turn now they're both almost neck and neck. So in terms of getting that home slot, then this is vital.
Well, live commentary on that one on Rugby Radio with Robin Purdy and Stuart Johnson making his first appearance on Rugby Radio. Stuart has been head coach of Melrose, Gala and Hawick, now a referee, but he's injured at the moment. He's in a boot, so one of those moon boot things. So he makes.
I thought you meant of a car.
No, that's someone else. So he makes his debut behind the microphone on Saturday, and no doubt he'll be answering a few tough questions from Robin Purdy about his career so far. And I'm sure equally Stuart will defend like a really good cricketer at the crease. But there'll also be television highlights, of course, on Borders Rugby TV on Sunday of that one. Well, Heriots Blues versus Kelso now. Last time the two met, it was a draw. Let's hear from Kelso Director of Rugby, Neil Hinnigan.
Heading up to Goldenacre on Saturday to face Heriots. Obviously it will be a very tough match. We haven't managed to win a game away from home this season yet, and Heriots haven't lost a game at home this season, so that really shows how hard the task is going to be to get a win. But obviously confidence is a bit higher now in the camp after a really good performance last week against Musselburgh. We had a really good first half where everything just sort of came together. Our phases of play, our structure, the defence that we showed really set the tone. And to be 38-0 up at half time was obviously credit to the boys. Coaches and players have been unhappy with quite a lot of things in the first half of the season. We actually felt as a group that we'd maybe not done ourselves justice, even though things were going okay and we were, staying away from the bottom of the table and whatnot. But we felt like we hadn't really expressed ourselves enough, and last Saturday we really did that in spades, and that gave all supporters and everyone involved a look into what we're capable of. But this week it's about backing that up and going away from home. Not many tougher places to go than the likes of Goldenacre, a big wide pitch. They'll be looking to play an expansive game as always, and we're going to have to be again as good in defence, if not better, as we were last week to get a result. But again, as I say, that the confidence is a bit higher, and if we're clinical and we take our chances and we can defend well enough and keep the penalties to a minimum, we will be in the game up there. The challenge now for the players is to back up a good performance with another good performance. I think this is an easy trap to fall into. I think Musselburgh themselves probably did that. They had a run of results. A great result away to Marr, and then they came down to Poinder and just caught a little bit cold with what we came out with, intensity wise, and we really took it to them, and things didn't go their way, and it was hard for them to adjust. And I think, if we're not careful, we could go to Goldenacre and find ourselves in the same position, because Heriot's are a free-flowing team that if you're not defending well, they will score lots of tries. And we're just going to have to ask the players to really front up big time again. And they've had a lot of pats on the back from everyone for last week, but they've really got to be switched on again to go to Goldenacre. So we're certainly not taking it lightly or thinking we've cracked the case, because we've got heaps and heaps of improvement to do yet to get to where we want to be. And selection-wise, first league match since COVID that Bruce McNeil won't in the team. He's got a little bit of a knock, but he also feels in himself that it's he can give others a chance to play, that they're playing well, and so he drops out the side. Apart from that, there's no changes. It's a pretty settled team, so we'll see how we go. And obviously without Bruce, it'll be another challenge, but I don't think we've any worries with the squad we've got and how the senior players in the team and indeed the youngsters are playing. There was maybe a time where you would have been thinking it was a task leaving Bruce out, but I think at this moment in time it'll be a good thing for them as well. There's a positive to it. So let's see how we go up there on Saturday. And also our Kelso Sharks are up there as well. We have a friendly against Heriot's 2A. So it's great to have two teams up there on Saturday. Plenty of rugby to be played.
Heriot's Blues coming off the back of 3 losses, but don't forget they've played their last 5 games away from home, winning just one of them, and they've won all 3 home matches so far against some sizable opposition. So Goldenacre is very much their happy place, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. We spoke about that a couple of weeks ago, about the kind of run of fixtures that Heriot's will have after the turn, and obviously got more home fixtures than away. So this is a good game for, you would say, for Heriot's, at home. They can try and turn around that kind of horrible run of form that they've had recently and start to stake a claim for the top 4 positions now. But you look at the table, and I think we'd probably, I'll say we, it was me. It was being a bit premature a few weeks ago, looking at the league and starting to split it into there was almost 3 mini leagues, and potentially 4, because Jed, you almost cut adrift, but the middle trunk of this league is just completely congested now. It's really squeezed up. And you would look at that and you think a win for Kelso really sets a cat amongst the pigeons as well, because it potentially could take them above Heriot's Blues, closer to the top 4, which I know a few weeks ago, like Neil Hinnigan was saying, Kelso weren't in the position that they wanted to be in. They've got clear targets. I do wonder whether top 4 was a target for them at the beginning of the season, but the way that the run and fixtures have went and the way that the form's been for the teams, apart from Hawick and maybe Marr, any team can beat anybody in this league, and I think that's what's making the kind of race for the top 4. Those 2 away semi-final places are really interesting. So this is a big game, because it's unrealistic, I think, but Kelso are still within a shout.
Now, Curry have tasted defeat 3 times this season. Pretty unusual, that. And Selkirk ran them close on Saturday in a very high-scoring game. What about Jed Forest coach David Grieve? Because it's Jed Forest who take on Curry this weekend.
On Saturday, we went up to play Edinburgh Accies. In the scoreline, it looks like we got pretty hammered and it was one-sided, but to be fair, first half, I thought we were really good. We played some of our best rugby this season. Our structure was good in attack, defended well, and to be fair, I can't remember them kind of breaking us down. Most of their points came from in the first half. It was a driving maul, and to be fair, they've got possibly the best maul in the league for the lineouts. But second half, we kind of lost our energy. We looked heavy-legged. Everything we were doing good in the first half, we just couldn't produce it in the second half. We just kind of completely ran out of steam. But again, we can't criticise our players. They're giving everything. The one concern I do have is we could only take 18 boys on Saturday. It's just not good enough, considering we were the only game in Jed that weekend. Our seconds didn't have a game, and we could only take 18 up kind of felt a bit let down with some of the players in the town. There's injuries and there's 2 or 3 illness as well, but as coaches, we need more. We need more commitment for players. We need players to come down and just help us out. This week we've got Curry, and again, we're getting very, very close to must-win situations here. We've got two home games in a row now, and we need points with these both games.
David Grieve, discuss that one.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, it's good to hear him speaking so open about it. The game first, obviously, playing well in patches, playing well in 40 minutes, but it's the same conversation that we had about the Hawick Selkirk game. The game's 80 minutes long, and I think that's been some of the problems that Jed have had, especially likes against Marr. They've been able to compete in chunks, but it's the little bits either at the beginning or the end of a game which is seeing Jed off. Now with the players, I think that that is pretty much a call to arms, really, if anything. He's obviously alluded to the fact there's injuries and illness in the squad. It's worrying and concerning that a club of Jed Forest standard can only produce 18 players on a Saturday when there's not another game. That is worrying. What that does now is that comment shines a light, because people in the town will be talking about that. People in the club will be talking about that. It shines a light on this squad now. So when you see names, omissions on that team sheet, you're going to be asking a couple of questions as to why they're not involved. So that really does put the responsibility onto the players. So the reaction's going to be interesting. Does 18 become more? Does 18 become 20 players in the squad? Or are they going to start... The worst thing that happens is they go the other way. A couple more injuries. 1 or 2 serious injuries before that game. They're literally scraping the barrel. So what that comment does is it shines a light on some of the players to say, look, are you willing to play for your town? Are you willing to help out and muck in with this team now? And it's always difficult, especially when you're at the bottom of a table. What is the incentive? What is the joy in going, knowing that you are potentially, well, on paper now, you're the worst team in the league. What is the incentive and the drive? Now, obviously, Greavy said there that it's to help out. It's to come and give more support to the coaches, give more support to the club, and that should be an incentive enough, you would think, for players to come back and put that jersey on and at least make a fist of it. Because we've seen when they played Marr at Riverside with a strong squad, they can compete. There's never been a question about Jed's commitment and their ability to compete on the field. But when you have that they're not committing as much off the field, that's when it seeps into the performances. So it's a huge statement, I think. It's bold as well. But the coaching staff are in the same position as the players. How many times have we ever seen in Scottish rugby, club rugby, coaches not turn up? I can't recall any time a coach has just went, I don't fancy it this weekend, but players do. And I know it's different because players are putting their body on the line, they're training, but coaches, the mental turmoil that they can go through, the passion that they have, and the commitment for coaching. It's not rocking up a Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. It's your whole week. It's sometimes your lifestyle, and we don't see it as much in coaching as we do, in players. So it's a big statement. It's a bold statement, but I like it. I think it's he's trying to get a reaction. He's trying to, jimmy up his players to get down to Riverside, because we know when Jed have got their best players in the park, they can compete. But that's been their Achilles heel this season.
And of course, it's interesting as well, because it's not just this season. Last season, they were short in numbers a wee bit as well. And you mentioned about coaches coming in. I mean, these guys at the moment looking after them are local. But when Andrew Brown was in charge, he was coming up from Consett, I think, along with Mark Lee. A long, long way to come. And to meet sort of half a dozen people at training, it's disheartening.
It is disheartening. But then again, you think about rugby as a whole, the pyramid system that we have, and I've said it before, is sometimes clubs just find their level, and unfortunately for Jed at the moment, this might be one of those phases where they have to find their level. If there's not an appetite for something, and they've not got the players, then it might be that in National 1 the players will enjoy it because they're more competitive. They might be mid-table, they might be fighting for promotion again, and we've seen Jed in the years gone by drop a couple of leagues, and as soon as their tails are up, they start sweeping back through, and the players come down to Riverside. The only difficulty now is those players that have been through that before are perhaps in the latter stages of their rugby career, but it's the dedication, it's the commitment that they're looking for. They've got 3 points in the league this season, so it's obviously it's not an attractive proposition to go and play Hawick and Marr and Curry, but the town need it and the club need it, and it's got such a rich history that it almost merits it. So hopefully, from my point of view as well, I love watching Jed play. I think they've got a great style of rugby. Some great guys at that club as well, so hopefully they're able to get the players back and at least pick up a couple of victories on the way to the end of the season. I don't think they'll stay in the league, but hopefully they get more players in the park and can make a fist of it.
Jed's best performance this season so far was at home against Marr, outscoring them 5-4, and they were top of the table at the time. Yeah,
this is a good fixture. I don't think Curry are as formidable as they were early on in the season when I talked them up at great length. They were really strong, and obviously I think the makeup of their squad has changed a little bit with some personnel swapping in and out. But Jed perform well at home. We know they do. So if this call to arms and this reaction comes from Jed and they're able to get the players back on the pitch, I wouldn't be surprised if they ran Curry close. But you've then got the other reaction. You've also got the other thing is that if the players do not show up and they've still got a weaker squad as such, Curry could find a lot of joy at Riverside on Saturday.
Musselburgh against Edinburgh Accies this time last week. We would have probably said Musselburgh would be favourites for this one, but they had a howler last week at Poynter Park, while Accies are up to third in the table, beat them at Raeburn Place earlier in the season.
Yeah, really, another huge game. We talked about the Heriots Blues Kelso game being big in terms of the race for the top four, and I think this is probably even more so. Musselburgh have had a great start to the season, scoring a lot of tries, some good wins on the road. That kind of the victory at Philiphaugh kind of ignited a real rich vein of form for them. But Edinburgh Accies have been really patchy, but have started, I've always said, I still fancy Accies to get into the top four, but they've started to hit their stride now. So, obviously, you would say almost the pressure's off for Edinburgh Accies because they're away from home. I think Musselburgh potentially, because of their home form, going to it as slight favourites, but you've got to start to think about that game last week against Kelso. They got an absolute pumping. So, Edinburgh Accies will be wanting to try and, capitalise on that, get them when they're kind of weak and get them when they're down and steal a march on them in the race for the top four. But Musselburgh, if they've got any intentions of breaking into that top four, this is a must-win.
And we always talk about border derbies and how unpredictable they can be. Edinburgh derby's the same, and we've seen Heriots, Edinburgh Accies, Musselburgh Curry all kind of take points off each other at unusual times of the season.
Yeah, I think certainly, obviously from the border side, we've watched them for years, and I've had more and more of an interest in the kind of the turbulent results coming from Edinburgh derbies, because it's obviously as feverish as it is in the borders. Those teams love beating each other, they love playing each other, they get up for the occasion, and we have seen some strange results. So we've seen wins on the road for like Heriots last year, winning at Raeburn Place, as you say, and picking up a big victory when the form book was not saying that at all. But this is a more intriguing encounter. This is a level playing field at Stonyhill. This is Musselburgh versus Edinburgh Accies, two teams vying for a position in the top four. And two teams that are almost, at the moment, they're almost like, for part of the season, they've been like ships in the night, because Edinburgh Accies were plummeting and going down. Musselburgh have been on a crest of a wave, and then all of a sudden it started to level out. So, this will be a really intriguing encounter on Saturday.
And there's something a little bit different from this fixture as well, because for the first time ever, I believe, Musselburgh will be kicking off at 3 o'clock during the winter because they've got some floodlights now.
Brilliant. Yes, the glimmer of the Bill McLaren shield will be it'll be shining in the new floodlights at Stonyhill. So yeah, it's great to see. I think it's a full raft of 3 o'clock kickoffs bar the Heriots versus Kelso game. So it's good to see that Musselburgh have obviously improved their facilities, and it'll be good as the night kind of falls in at Stonyhill, and there'll be a bit of a ding dong going on as well. So I bet it'll be a good atmosphere.
Anyway, let's move on to the other match, which is Selkirk against Glasgow Hawks at Philiphaugh. David Ferguson will be covering that one for us this week. Both lost their matches last weekend. Selkirk at Curry, Hawks at home to Hawick. Here's the thoughts of both head coaches now. Andy Hill from Hawks, and first Sesh Henderson in charge of Selkirk.
We really played some really good attacking rugby last week against Curry. Really pleasing the type of scores we scored. Really good team tries, multi-phase attack, and we caused Curry a lot of problems. The main problem for us was that we gave them 19 points at a start, which was really difficult to come back from. The pleasing point for me is that the attitude never dropped after that. 15 minutes, 19 points down. We came back, scored a couple of tries, then really got ourselves back in the game. Second half they scored another couple. Then we came back, we scored 3 excellent tries, which is really positive to see, because that's what we've been working towards. Massive home game for us. We got like Glasgow Hawks, a big opportunity here if we get our defensive systems right, we put in some big hits against Curry. We need to do that against Hawks because we've got a massive set of forwards, a couple of good centres that run really hard, and a fast back three. But if we get a defensive line right and we get in the right areas and attack as we did against Curry, look, we've got an opportunity to get another win. Saturday is a big game for us. We know that, and we're really excited for it. And we hope to go out there and put a performance in, get a win. Really deserve a win. They've put in some big performance the last 2 or 3 weeks. Things haven't went for us. But boys are desperate to get there and get a whole win.
Saturday was a real tough one for us. We were obviously really disappointed by the result, but there was a good performance in there from us, particularly by the forwards, whereby we could take a lot of positives from that. We were 14-0 down after 10 minutes, having not really done too much wrong. There was 2 mistakes whereby Hawick have pounced on right away and scored, basically no phases or anything like that. So we were just really ruthless, real clinical, and it was all credit to Hawick to be able to do that. And once you're 14-0 down against a team that's not lost in a year and a half, you know it's going to be an uphill struggle. But the boys dug in really deep. We scored a good move off the maul, going into half-time after we'd kicked a penalty. And then after half-time, we also got a maul try. And then we managed to get a penalty around halfway. We kicked to the corner and we dominated in the maul. We were probably better up front than what I felt Hawick were. And with that, we got a maul set up and then we get penalised for someone being in front of the maul or something like that. I couldn't quite make out in the video. I thought it was quite a poor call, but that was quite a critical point in the game whereby Hawick ended up with a penalty on their own 5. They managed to kick to the corner and get themselves going. They get a penalty. We give away, kick to the corner, another penalty. And kick to the corner, then all of a sudden they managed to score. So it was virtually a 13-point swing in that, which was difficult to take. And by that time, it was 20 minutes into the second half, 13 points down. You're back to where you were 10 minutes into the game and chasing. And it's probably unrealistic we're going to get back into it. And then Hawick managed to score again. They basically gave us an opportunity to go away and try a few guys in different positions, see how we cope, to try and see how that would go. But I was really proud of the forwards. Best performance I felt they'd had through the entire year. It's about trying to put the performance together because we know how important Saturday's going to be against Selkirk. They're just a position below us. They're going to be desperate to beat us. We're obviously desperate to continue moving up and focusing on beating those guys round about us because we feel if we can get 2 or 3 games on the bounce, which is obviously really difficult, particularly the way our fixtures lie, then we'll put ourselves in a position to be around about 5th and chasing down teams. And there's games obviously like the Curry game in hand, and we virtually play them back to back, where if we manage to get a result in both of those games, it's a massive swing for us. So we just need to focus this weekend to try to put together an 80-minute performance. Pretty difficult one. We lost Torkel McLeod at the weekend. He played on through a broken hand, which is obviously ruled him out for this week. Josh McConkey, the centre, is away this weekend. So a couple of bodies will be coming in that are desperate to play and make a difference there. The guys that have been unavailable, that are normally first 15 regulars. So Sam Graham and Ryan Flett will both start this weekend. And it's Wayne Burrows comes back into the mix as well. Having come in at 10 the last couple of weeks off the bench, he probably was looking to try and play him at 12 this week. So it's about trying to make sure we can put our game forward that obviously similar to what we did at Belgrave. If we manage to get play tempo with speed, then we know we're going to cause Selkirk problems. But having watched them, obviously teams change slightly with them as well. We're well aware of the threats they're going to bring with, Ross Nixon back at 12. He's a big physical lad, tends to play quite well against us. Aaron McComb back at 10 orchestrates quite well, kicks the ball quite a lot of attacking kicks in amongst that as well. So we know it's going to be a difficult game, but we feel if we bring our A game, we travelled into Selkirk well, when we come off the bus in the right frame of mind, then we'll give ourselves a real good chance to win and get ourselves moving in the right direction.
Andy Hill, head coach of Glasgow Hawks. Before that, Sesh Henderson, head coach of Selkirk. Now, Selkirk, slow starters in the last couple of games, and that's something they're going to have to avoid, but they do finish games well.
Yeah, especially at home, you don't want to be starting too slowly. You want to try and get your home crowd behind you, give them something to cheer about and give them something to back you with, and this is probably quite a good game. Again, the Hawks have got a big pack, and Selkirk have got decent width, and they're able to throw the ball about, so there's almost a contrast in styles there. Although Selkirk, they've got a good front row, depending on who's been deployed, because it's been chopped and changed so far this season. I think obviously they've got quite good depth in the front row, I would say, but obviously they can do a bit of rotation there, so they're going to have to be strong up front to allow that platform. You hear them chatting, Andy Hill chatting there about the boot of Aaron McComb, and where he likes to try and play rugby, and he's a good controlling fly half. He takes the ball to the line as well, so he asks questions of defenders, and he's not a Scotland Club international because he's a bad player. He's a quality 10, equally as good a 9 as well. So he's a good rugby player all round, and Hawks know that threat, and I think Celtic will be trying to utilise that. They'll be trying to just pin Hawks back in the corner, trying to get them play from deep, and try and see if they've got any confidence to really test them and really take the game to Celtic. So again, it's one of those games that Celtic, as you say, they need to start quickly, but the pressure's off them. I don't think there's any real danger of them going down. I think they've got a couple of victories left in them which would see them home and hosed. But Hawks, as they said a few weeks ago, almost about a month and a half ago now, they've given all the other teams a bit of a head start in the race to the top 4, so they've still got that in their sights. So this is another game this weekend, which is a must-win for one of the sides, and I think it's Hawks who have to put in the performance.
Well, we were at Hawks last week, of course, covering that game, and they didn't play badly, to be honest. I mean, they were 14-0 down, basically a couple of errors on their part, and some good play from Jay Linton, and all of a sudden they're 14-0 down against the run of play. Very hard to play catch-up against the Scottish champions, of course. But overall, I think they didn't get a great deal of luck in that game, and they'll be disappointed with the result, of course. But they'll certainly be looking to change things at Philiphaugh, and it's going to be an interesting game.
Yeah, it's amazing how games pan out, and obviously they've looked back at that game and noticed they've apart from a couple of moments in the game, they've been competing really well against the Scottish champions and league leaders. But the difference is not Jay Linton's the difference, but players of that ilk, being able to break away from the scrum and break 2 challenges. You're already in behind, and the supporting lines coming through from the likes of Callum Rennick. It's difficult to compete against that. It's certainly a time for Hawks to go back to the drawing board and against a side who are towards the bottom of the table. So a lot is expected of Hawks. I think that they go into this and they certainly start as favourites.
So there we are. I think it's about time we went into National 1 now, isn't it? Let's take a look at National 1's results from last week. Biggar 55, GHK 8. Haven't said that for a long time. Gala 31, Watsonians 10, Glasgow Accies 29, Ayr 50, Highland 38, Dundee 12, and Melrose 40, GHA 10. So we'll start with Biggar. 2 wins on the bounce now. The slow starters in the league, but they've finally got their season running.
Yeah, I think they've welcomed a few players back, and it's obviously a really important time in the season. And I still stand by my statement last week. I think that was the biggest game. It's not panned out as tight as perhaps I thought it would be, but it's a huge victory for Biggar. It really is a sucker punch to GHK. But I think there'll be a little bit of relief at Hartree Mill that they were able to pick up that victory eventually, because they have been so slow in getting into this campaign. But yeah, that's a huge victory.
And Gala and Melrose turning round away defeats to the same opposition from earlier in the season, and also getting back-to-back wins. So we're starting to see a little bit of green light for those 2 clubs as well.
Yeah, you look at it, they're home wins for everybody apart from Ayr, which in the before the weekend you could have probably called those results, to be fair. I think the Melrose game, listening to Graham Dodds, said that it wasn't a 40-10 game, but Melrose took their opportunities, and that's what they've made it. They've made it a 40-10 game on paper, and I think sometimes when we look at the results, you don't get the narrative of how the game panned out. But again, I was watching that result come in from Glasgow Accies and Ayr with a little bit of nervous energy, because obviously I'd said about the Biggar game being the biggest of the 2. But again, Ayr being able to pull away from Glasgow Accies. Obviously Accies can score points and can rack up a decent tally, but that's Ayr got to the 50-point mark in that game, and that's a comfortable victory on the road. Yeah,
and a 15-point gap, crucially, over Glasgow Accies. You can't see any way back for them, really, in this league now. So it's, to me, it's looking like an Ayr Highland shoot-off. And the Highland aren't too far behind. We'll come to the table very, very shortly. But they had a win against Dundee. Dundee were actually leading at that point early in the game, and then Highland got into that other gear that they found all season, and a comfortable win for them in the end.
Been impressed with Highland. There was a time where we questioned, I think it was the Biggar game actually, can they put that performance on the road, and they were able to come through that test, and then a victory at Netherdale as well, and they've been able to win these games away from home, which has put them in a good position. I still think that obviously Ayr are comfortable at the top, but there's still a chance, and as long as there's still a chance in this league, it's interesting. I totally agree though. I think the Ayr have cut this into a 2-team league now in terms of the top of the table. It's between them and Highland. those games as well come later on in the season. So if both teams can keep up that form, I think it's going to be an intriguing finish, because you've almost got, that 10-point turnaround that could potentially be on offer for both of these sides. But yeah, Ayr in irresistible form at the moment.
So we're at the halfway stage, apart from Gala and GHK, who have played 10 games instead of the 9 so far. Ayr, top of the table, 9 out of 9, points difference of 189, 7 try bonuses, 43 points at the top of the table and looking comfortable. Highland in second place, just that one loss to GHA earlier on in the season. They're on 37. Glasgow Accies in third on 28. Melrose just 1 point behind them now, almost identical, played 9, won 5, lost 4, and only 17 points difference. Glasgow Accies with 7 try bonuses, 1 losing, and Melrose 6 try bonuses and 1 losing, and they're on 27. GHA have 25, Gala 23, Watsonians 20, Biggar 17, Dundee 16, and GHK 13 at the bottom.
Yeah, Biggar get off the foot of the table, and it was a huge result, I think, at Hartree Mill at the weekend, because GHK, as you say, have played a game more than Biggar, so they've got less games to try and pick up that victory, and that's why I think it was the biggest game last weekend. Is victories are few and far between when you're at the foot of the table, and GHK have got less of an opportunity to try and grab a couple before the end of the season. But you look at those 4 bottom teams. I think Watsonians down to GHK, that could change and intertwine from now until the end of the season in terms of who's going to be rooted to the bottom after 18 games.
So this Saturday's games are National 1, starting with Ayr versus Biggar. First against 8th, Biggar gave Ayr problems at Hartree Mill, we'll remember, something which won't be overlooked by Ayr head coach Grant Anderson.
We were pleased with the victory and the 5 points. I'd really been quite hard on the boys in that week of training last week, just challenging their mentality a wee bit and trying to make sure that we're not dropping off in games and allowing ourselves to switch off. And then I felt when we played GHK, we only played for maybe half an hour of that game, and other spells where we dropped off what we want to do in terms of our decision making, in terms of our accuracy, in terms of our discipline. So really quite hard on them Tuesday, Thursday last week. We went against the Bulls on Tuesday again. That's a great opportunity for us to put kind of things into practice under pressure. So I think that helped us. And then obviously Accies, we had done our homework on Accies. Accies are going really well. They're obviously a really good team who are well coached by the lads. They probably play a kind of unique brand of rugby in this league. They're probably the team that wants to play the most. Happy to throw it about. I was actually really impressed with their maul on Saturday, if I'm honest. Luckily for us, our maul D is one of our strengths, so that worked. But I was really pleased with the 5 points, and it keeps our momentum. Last night we had a really good session again with the Bulls. So that was really quite physical. I think actually for both sides, when we played Biggar at the start of the season, remember I said to you, I think we had 9 injuries at that point. I wasn't promoting it, but we had a lot of injuries, and obviously Biggar's squad has changed a little over the last kind of few weeks. So it'll be an interesting game. They'll pose a lot of threats, and we know what happens if you switch off against Biggar. We nearly undone ourselves up there. So there will be absolutely no way that that's going to be allowed to happen on Saturday, and we'll just make sure that we're being positive with our decision making, our strategy of what we're wanting to do in attack and D, and our discipline. Looking back to last Saturday, it's probably the first time that you've heard me saying this, but there were some, we had some standout individual performances that probably fed into the momentum of the team. Rohan Potty, our 7, was just absolutely phenomenal, both in attack and D. The level of go forward he's given us in phase play is just exceptional. For me, it's at pro level. Joe Stafford is another one who had been injured for a few weeks. He's now back, and the impact that he made on the squad, just in his knowledge and his understanding of the game and the power of his carries, that really gave us a fantastic attacking platform. And then another standout for me was Adam McGowan, who is, I've spoken to you before, he's a scrum half by trade, but has been playing on the wing for us, and he was fantastic on Saturday. And what we're looking to do in terms of our attacking system, he was able to execute that fully. So I was really, really pleased with that. And then towards the end of the game, we actually put him into 9, and he was equally as destructive in there as he was on the wing. So I was really, really pleased for the group overall, but also for those individual guys to be putting such a high standard of performance in. It's what was needed against a quality team like Accies. Again, turning our attention to Biggar, we're looking to make sure that we're keeping our performance levels as high, if not higher, than they were last Saturday. It's about developing a squad understanding for me, kind of a shared vision of where we want to be, where we see ourselves and how we want to be playing week on, week out. And it needs to be consistent for me, and that's the biggest thing. I think consistency with your selections in terms of what guys are doing when they come in, consistency about your structure and attack and D, that then builds some momentum. So I'm looking to see the same performance, if not, go one better. And we're looking forward to the game. It should be a physical battle that we'll enjoy.
So that's Aaron Biggar, and a real challenge for Biggar this week.
Yeah, obviously off the back of a really good performance against GHK, Biggar will go into it with a little bit more confidence than perhaps they would have a fortnight ago. But Ayr at home at Millbrae is a difficult place to travel. Literally just for the infrastructure to get to Ayr, it's bad enough. But it's a bit of a West Coast derby, and I think Biggar will be up for the occasion as well. Nothing to lose for Biggar. They want to try and salvage as many points as possible, but Ayr want to just keep that juggernaut going towards the Premiership, I think.
Dundee against Glasgow Accies, desperate Dundee now, and Accies will want to return to their big scores that have evaded them for the last few weeks.
They've been impressive after coming into this division. I don't think they can be too disheartened as to a couple of defeats that they've suffered so far this season. Big ones at that, in terms of the important ones at the top of the table, but they've got themselves in that position. They'll be really encouraged as to the way that they've found life so far in National 1, but it's a good opportunity to try and steady the ship again and put up some points and sweep Dundee aside.
GHA versus Gala, 5th against 6th. Here's Gala Director of Rugby, Ewan Swinton.
Game against Watsonians on Saturday was one that we were pretty pleased with. The outcome with a 31-10 result was I think satisfactory. We could have done better. We could have scored more tries. We left one or two out there, but I think you can almost always say that in a game where things have gone fairly well. What was really pleasing on Saturday was some real grunt coming in from the forwards. We had lots of go forward from guys like Glen Brough, Tim McCavanagh and Cammy Pate, all making breaches that took us well into the opposition territory and set up chances for themselves and for others. In the backs, there's a real flow about the way we're attacking now. We have settled down from the slightly harem-scarum scenario we had at the start of the season. Scott Peffer's at standoff is injecting some real shape into the game, and the wingers are expecting to see the ball on a regular basis. And we're seeing Richie Mitchell really settle into a first team game, and Ben Gill in the other wing is really improving his game as well. He's settling in and coming on really well from where he was at the start of the season. So all looking good, and we are heading up to GHA on Saturday. That will be a really challenging game. GHA have lost a couple in the spin, but they are a strong outfit, and I think it's quite normal that the Glasgow sides perform that wee bit better through in their own territories. So we are expecting a really hard game, and to an extent it's almost a free hit in the sense that many will be expecting us to struggle up there, but that's certainly not how we'll see it. We're confident. The shape is really coming into the game. We are due an away win. There's no reason why it shouldn't come on Saturday. We have the defence, so the attacking side of things starting to come through really well, and the defensive aspects of the game, the way that we're covering the pitch, the way that we're protecting our territory is fantastically improved. We'll expect to front up in the forwards. As I've said before, the front five are certainly much stronger and more solid than they were in the start of the season, and the back row are getting lots of chances to run, link with the backs and make things happen. So it'll be tough through at GHA, but I think that there's a more than fair chance that we'll come out of the game with something. I would hope for a win. I won't be surprised if we win, but what we'll look for is an ever-improving performance and take things forward into the second half of the season really strongly.
Ewan Swinton there, Director of Rugby at Gala. Gala been creeping up the table after the last two wins, and they could go up again above GHA on Saturday. Let's not forget they have played one game more, the same as GHK has, which is more worrying for GHK than Gala.
Yeah, a lot of G's and a lot of H's in there, and but yeah, definitely. I think GHK, as I alluded to before, are have played one game more, so there's less opportunity to pick up another victory. But in the middle of the table, it's just trying things out and trying to build towards next season now, because there's no realistic expectation from any of those sides that there's going to be an opportunity opening up to be competitive. And I think that the sides know that now. The new 10-team leagues, there's not as much opportunity for promotion or relegation. So, unfortunately for some of these teams, they've now just hit that point in the season where, the games they're competitive games. They're always going to be competitive, but, there's not as much riding on them as perhaps, certainly those teams at the bottom and the couple at the top as well. So there's that kind of little trunk in the middle, and GHA and Gala are stuck in that.
GHK versus Melrose, that's 10th against 4th. Melrose have also won their last 2 games. How are they going to approach this one? Let's find out from head coach Ian Chisholm.
It felt like we just really clicked against GHA last weekend. The way that we approached the game and the way that we stuck to task, and just the tactical discipline that the boys showed right the way throughout the game was bloody good. And up there, first time round, we got turned upside down at scrum time. So since then, it's been a huge focus for us, and we've put a lot of time into it, and we sacrificed other areas of the game to allow the forwards to go and work at that. And look, we've had John Dale down, we've got Nick Bevan down, and for me, like the experience of these guys and the little bits of fault correction that they're bringing in all the time it's priceless for us. And our guys are really, they're really engaged when people like this are down as well. But look, I'm just so proud of the performance and so proud of the attitude, and as you'd expect, the whole energy around the club as a whole was brilliant after the game. And it's probably the first time that it's looked like a team that's been coached by Ian Chisholm, if that makes sense. Struan Hutchison got a bit of his funk back. He made a ridiculous amount of line breaks, and Finn Barry was great. Bruce Colvin was a real source of go forward for us. For a wee guy, he's bloody aggressive and he gets us a lot of quick ball. And then Hamish Weir had a wee cameo before leaving the park with a quad injury, and it's been a wee bit of frustration for Hamish this season, where probably only played about 90 minutes of rugby altogether. And I think for him it's about getting his body right and coming back absolutely flying, because it's when he's on the pitch for us, it's a different sort of game. If anyone kicks to him, then you can hear it when we're watching the game back. Our players, as soon as Hamish gets the ball in the backfield, they're going, have a go. So it's great for us, and it's great for him that he has the freedom to just go and be him. But again, like going back to the GHA game on Saturday, we moved the ball a lot, we played at real tempo, tried to go width to width and tire them out a wee bit, and I thought we did that really well. Not an awful lot is going to change going into this weekend, but as we travel away to GHK, we know that they're at the bottom of the table, but traditionally over the last few years, Melrose have had a really good performance followed up by a really poor performance, and while there was a lot of focus and a lot of praise around our attack at the weekend, I think it was our defence and our ability to manage our half that allowed us to go away and do that. So those are the key messages going into this week, is around continue to manage our half, continue to make good decisions, continue to transfer pressure to them, and when we get an opportunity, let's make sure we take them. And while it was a 40 points to 10 scoreline against GHA, we had maybe 6 or 7 line breaks that we didn't convert. We had a few 5-metre line outs that we didn't convert, and then again we missed a few kicks at goal as well, which for me would have stacked the scoreline up even more. But we're not taking anything for granted. GHK they're a different team at home than they are away. They seem to pick up results and pick up points when they're at home too. So we're going up there looking to just validate the points and validate last week's performance by getting better at the things that we did really well and seeing how many moments we can stay in system to allow us to really come to life.
Fair play to them as well. Melrose have recovered well from the beating dished out by Glasgow Accies at the Greenyards a few weeks ago, and they're now in 4th place and should continue that run at the bottom club. Yeah,
a team of that ilk should, Melrose, we know how good they are, in terms of the years gone by. They're a huge club in Scottish rugby, so that can't be understated. But obviously they've reacted pretty well to having some unsavoury defeats, and it really just it cut them away from that top of the table. And against GHK now, that's they had a really handsome victory early on in the season, 68 points to 7. It was a huge victory for them. I think Ian Chisholm, listening to him there as well, he's under no illusions of the fact that GHK have picked up 2 victories at home. So their 2 victories that they've had so far have been at home, so they know their home form can be pretty challenging for teams. Some of their other results have been pretty close, but beating Biggar and Gala at home, they know that they can pick up those victories. So I think it's good that Ian Chisholm's going into the game with that mindset, trying to get that into his players, because the weekend past they picked up a really good victory against GHA, so they'll be wanting to continue that momentum because they've got a young squad. I think they'll know as well, like they're not going to go up this year, but knowing the ambition of a club like Melrose, like this game and the game after and last week as well, they'll be the building blocks to trying to create that launch pad to go up next year. They're not a team that just like to participate. They're a really hungry club. Sometimes it's unsavoury for the other teams round about them because of how successful they've been, but that's their fabric, and I think these games coming up now will just start to be the building blocks for next year.
The final match is Watsonians against Highland, 7th against 2nd. Highland won 41-0 at Canal Park the week after Watsonians put 69 points on Gala. Highland's only loss so far this season has been at Braidholme against GHA. They were beaten 38-14 on that occasion. They're still very much in the hunt, and they played GHA, GHK and Biggar before two even bigger games for them on December the 9th at Melrose, and then January the 6th against Ayr at Millbrae. And don't forget, the big two haven't met yet due to the postponed game earlier in the season, so they have to play Ayr at home on January the 27th, as well as Glasgow Accies away from home on February the 3rd.
Yeah, I think, obviously I do like the way that the postponed games is mapped out for Highland and Ayr. It means it's really intriguing, but the big thing that Highland need to do is make sure that they continue that momentum to those games. They need to pick up the victories, because it'll matter not a jot, because I just still do not see where Ayr are going to be dropping as many points. So there's a 6-point gap between them just now. You would think that if there's a defeat in there for Highland, that then takes it to potentially 11, potentially, if we're maximising the points. That's a 3-game swing essentially. So if they can stay in the hunt to those two big games, they'll be crackers. They'll be like home and away. The atmosphere at both of those grounds. I've not been to I've not been to Highland, but I've seen the crowds that they get, the atmosphere that's there. And then obviously at Millbrae, I've been there on several occasions for Bulls games, for club games, for cup games, and it's a brilliant place to watch a game of rugby, never mind play. So, if those two teams can keep that momentum going into those fixtures, it's going to be really interesting. But as we say, we've got that game this weekend, Watsonians away from home. It's a tricky game for Highland. Again, I think it's the away form that they need to make sure that they can maintain. They've been impressive so far, but Watsonians can somehow, I don't know how, but they can put on a performance every now and again.
International 2 and last weekend's results: Falkirk 55, Lasswade 33, Gordonians 27, Berwick 15, Peebles 46, Kirkcaldy 17, Stewmel 41, Aberdeen Grammar 32, Stirling County 27, Newton Stewart 43. So a top of the table clash certainly lived up to its top billing. 88 points, a red card as well for Falkirk's Stuart McCulloch, but Falkirk top of the table with a game in hand.
They could ill afford to lose this game against Lasswade, because the kind of momentum for them would completely come away. Whereas Lasswade, obviously, they'd started pretty well. It's their second defeat, again a defeat against a near rival. So perhaps those fixtures they're starting to tell a story now. In terms of these interesting fixtures, because Lasswade, they beat Peebles on the road. Peebles beat Falkirk. Peebles and Falkirk still have a game in hand. So if Peebles win, they can go above Lasswade, and Falkirk still have to go to the Gate. So there's a lot of big games still in National 2 to come, but in terms of that fixture that was there, it's a really comprehensive victory for Falkirk, but showing that they concede points as well. 33 points is a lot to concede to a rival.
Gordonians, Peebles, both winning, of course, to keep the pressure on. Newton Stewart as well.
Yeah, those sides all, again, could ill afford to drop points. And Newton Stewart with a really good victory on the road at Stirling County. So it's it keeps the momentum going in there for them. But Gordonians and Peebles, big victories, and then a big weekend coming ahead.
League table then, Falkirk. Play date, of course, has got that game in hand. 36 at the top of the table. Lasswade in second, also on 36. Peebles have 32. Gordonians 30. Newton Stewart 28. So that's the top five. And then there's a big gap. There's 12 points to Stirling County in sixth. They're on 16. Kirkcaldy 13. Stewart's Melville up from the bottom have 12 points now. Don't forget they had 3 points docked as well. So that big win against Aberdeen Grammar, absolutely essential essential for them. Aberdeen Grammar 9 and Berwick 8. Aberdeen getting that try bonus, which they've done 4 times this season. That puts Berwick at the bottom of the table for the first time.
They obviously suffered defeat on the road to Aberdeen Grammar earlier on in the season, so they know they've got another kind of stab at them. But even Stumel there as well, Kirkcaldy, they're in Stirling County. You know, they're not a million miles away. There's a real split. This is probably the one league where there's a split straight across the middle. You know, there's certainly a competitive battle for promotion, but it's equally as competitive for relegation. The only thing that is ominous for Berwick is they're the only side in that division yet to pick up a victory.
Falkirk against Newton Stewart, first against fifth. Can Falkirk reproduce that home form from last week?
You would argue that they can. You know, they're playing a side who have had a good string of results recently, but Falkirk do need to make that home form count, because this could certainly be a big game come the end of the season for Falkirk to look back on. There's a lot of big games this weekend, obviously in the top of the table, but you would say that Newton Stewart, if they've got any aspirations of getting themselves back into the hunt as well for promotion, then they need to win on the road, so a must win for both teams.
Gordonians against Peebles, an absolute huge match for both teams here. Gordonians lost at the Guides early in the season. Peebles finding some form again. Let's listen to what Peebles head coach Graham Patterson has to say.
Really pleased with our performance, which led to the great result against Kirkcaldy. Pretty all-round performance for most aspects of the game. Our attack was certainly more connected and more dangerous. One part of it that we looked at was the penalty count. That was for both sides, especially around about the breakdown. A lot of that is quite subjective in terms of the referee's interpretation of what was going on. So we've had a look at that. We don't think there's a real immediate problem, but we've worked on some areas that we think might give us a positive outcome going forward for the season. And it's also about that, looking for those little improvements, despite you could rest on our laurels and say, okay, we won 46-17 and that's it, we're okay, we just move along. But no, we're a squad that likes to look for little improvements here and there that is going to make the difference in maybe those tighter games, and that's what we're coming into now. We're coming into a block of games which is going to be tighter. But going back to the Kirkcaldy game, it was an early scrum penalty against us, but we was problem solved and worked it out. It was just a kind of change in height that we looked for, and that gave us a real foothold in that aspects of the set piece. Our lineouts again were very well constructed and called. 17 out of 18 lineouts, one cleanly and just the one slightly wayward one, which is still a very, very good performance at that aspect of the game. But I think what the difference in terms of performance-wise was the connection between our halfbacks and our midfield and wide attack. One of the areas that was good to see was how Ross Wolfenden fitted in and reacquainted himself with his old Colts friend at inside centre and James Hodgkiss, and that was probably one of James's best games for a number of games now, and probably just going back to playing with somebody who's familiar with and he's played a lot of rugby with in his youth days. Maybe helped in that, and it's given him a bit more confidence to come out and play the way he did on Saturday, which was really a competent display at 12. Our impacts from our bench really kept the pressure on as well. All four of the guys that came on, John Napier and Rory Smith, kept the scrum pressure on, really did in that sort of last half hour of the game. Kenny Clyde came on and carried really well, and that's what he was tasked with doing. He's the sort of guy that will do that, provide some energy around about that midfield carrying options, some good size to the scrum as well to keep that pressure on there. And Jordan Charters as well impacted really well from the bench as well. So overall very pleased with the performance, which gave us that result. So move forward and look ahead to Gordonians. We've looked at these areas, those couple of wee areas at training, worked on those, given the guys some feedback, looked at the video and tagged them into some areas that they've looked at as well. So really focusing on detail now. Looking forward to this block, which will take us up to Christmas, and that will shape our season and possibly other clubs' seasons as well. Gordonians have done really well. I mean, they came down to us, first game of the season, good game of rugby from both sides, and we prevailed there, denied him anything from the game, which is great. But since then, they've really put some good performances in, got some good results, and are up there challenging alongside ourselves, Falkirk and Lasswade and Newton Stewart. So we know that this is going to be a tough game. Going up to Aberdeen is always tough. The journey, it's always talked about. It's no excuse for me. The players need to just deal with it and then mentally get ready for that game as soon as they arrive. So we've looked at these areas of the breakdown. We're looked at how to exploit chances that we're given. We know that there's going to be fewer chances probably than we had against Kirkcaldy. So we need to be really clinical in terms of putting these chances away, which we were pretty good on Saturday, but we talked about it and the guys felt they left 2 or 3 tries out there. So it's about turning that 2 or 3 into maybe just 1. I anticipate it being a very, very close game. So our attacking threats are starting to really push to the fore. It's not just a drive and maul, it's not just pick and goes. It's that aligned with half-back threats, kicking threats and wider threats aligned to counter-attacking as well. Davy Collins has been instrumental in sort of reigniting our counter-attack from deep. He's really put himself forward in these last couple of games that he's played in. As you'd expect with a couple of wins, we're not going to be changing the squad much at all. And in fact, the only change is an enforced one with Willie Aitken being unavailable. So Neil Hogarth comes back in, and being a previous captain from the previous year, he brings that experience as well and leadership skills, which will help in these difficult situations and difficult games that we're going to face, especially this Saturday up at Gordonians. So looking forward to the long trip up to Aberdeen, and hopefully a nice trip on the way back down.
Graham Patterson, now this could put a bit of daylight between Peebles and Gordonians, but the opportunity for Gordonians to move into third.
I think you can start to see the stamp that Patterson's having on this Peebles side. You know, they're starting to build a lot of confidence. He's a really good coach. I was lucky to be coached by him when I was a Colt at Peebles, and he's got such a good vision in terms of getting his message across, which I think, you know, you get some coaches who have got good ideas, but it's struggling to get them into the heads of players, and he gets a great buy-in. So you can start to see that. You think about the Berwick game the other weekend, they rarely looked troubled, even without the ball. You know, both sides of the ball, Peebles were impressive, but this is a game where Gordonians, who, you know, came into the division, they had to start at the gates, they suffered defeat. Peebles didn't play well either. They'll want a little bit of retribution here. They'll be wanting to try and, you know, upset this Peebles camp, and again blow that race to promotion right open.
Lasswade versus Kirkcaldy. Lasswade will be targeting this one as a 5-point win, which they need to do, of course, to keep the pressure on Falkirk.
And we've spoken about it before in other other games and other divisions, but it's just how Lasswade react now. So obviously they go into this favourites. They've played really well. They've had some good results under Peter Wright, but this is a tricky game against Kirkcaldy. Like they're a team that can blow hot and cold, and especially if you take them on up front, which I think Lasswade, obviously they've got a really big, robust pack. You know, players like Dale Robertson in there, you know, in the front row. He's had time at Boroughmuir. He was playing in the Premiership. He's a really good front row player. Obviously now playing at Lasswade. They have players like that can really test sides. So, you know, if Kirkcaldy take them on up front and get a bit of parity in the battle in the forwards, you know, this could be a really intriguing game. If Lasswade are able to squeeze Kirkcaldy, then you would imagine it's going to be 5 points.
Stuart Melville had a dogfight with Aberdeen at the bottom end of the table last week. They've got another dogfight this week, also at Inverleith, Stumel against Berwick. And the two, of course, drew at the start of the season. We're going to hear from both coaches, Paul Pringle from Berwick, and first, Stumel's Alex Haggart.
Really pleased with the result against Grammar on Saturday. We were delighted with the way that we got the win. It was a bit ugly at points, and I think it was two teams who probably did know there was quite a lot riding on that game. I think the most pleasing thing for us, you know, we watched the video back, and I think the boys have engaged with it quite well, is that we know there is a huge amount for us to improve, and there's areas where we can definitely be better, and I think that's really important. So in terms of that, this week, you know, playing against Berwick at home, our reality is not where we want to be, but it's where we are, which is this is a huge game, and it can kind of put a little bit of light in between us, which is quite nice. But for me, and from my perspective, you know, we're looking to do a few things. We're looking to kind of hold the ball for longer periods in the opposition half, because when we do, you know, we get great success from it. And that was something that we noticed from Grammar game, was that we didn't hold the ball as well as maybe we could, and we coughed it up a couple of times. So when we do hold it and we are accurate, we seem to get positive outcomes, whether that be a penalty or a try or something. And then the other side of the ball is we're just looking to negate defensive penalties. We gave away 13 penalties across the whole game on Saturday, and actually we weren't too, disappointed with that. You would ideally like 10 or 11, but 13 is not bad. But it was where we were giving them away were the big killers. So we're looking to try and minimise that and get away from that kind of death zone a wee bit in terms of our penalty concessions. And I suppose the last thing that we're looking to do this weekend is I think the forwards know the task that they've got in front of them. Like I think I said it after we played Berwick back in September, and I'm sure the Berwick coaches wouldn't mind my saying, but like Berwick have got a really, really, really strong pack, and that is their obvious strength. And I think their driving game and their scrum game is really positive. They've got big ball carriers in the back row as well, which make a big difference. So, we need to be really aware of that, and we need to be in a position where, we can negate their threat and we can try and use our threats against them. So that's kind of where we are. We're really looking forward to the game at the weekend. I think it'll be an awesome game. And I'd also just like to say that we've got a massive lunch on for Simon and Julian Scott, both of whom are being awarded their retrospective caps by the club and by Scottish Rugby. So, I think from everyone at the club as well, we'd just like to send a huge congratulations to those two and all of their families. I think it's going to be a pretty sort of wild affair in the clubhouse. So, just a huge congratulations to them, and we look forward to seeing them on Saturday as well.
So last week, for the second time this season, we made the long journey up to Aberdeen to face Gordonians. We knew Gordonians have had a good start to the season, especially after their promotion into the league. We arrived up there. They were a very big team, well drilled, and really put us under quite a lot of pressure. They scored within the first 30 seconds of the game, and it really kind of probably just shook us a little bit. So I think if anything, we're maybe just a little bit slow getting off the bus. They got 3 quite quick tries, and then the lads rallied really well. So we were competitive in the set plays. The backs looked dangerous with ball in hand. We got a couple of tries back, and then pressing just for that losing bonus point right at the end, which unfortunately we didn't get. In terms of a performance, it was much improved from the week before. Just that kind of general body language approach to the game, guys reacting to things not quite going our way, which tends to happen when you're near the bottom of the league. But all in all, myself and Colin, we were very happy with the lads' approach to it. Still, a few things that we need to work on, and have worked on at training this week. Just those kind of critical errors again at key moments of the match. Those are the points that we really need to, just iron out and lead to the much needed victory. Moving forward into this week, we're away to Stroomel, which will be a really tough match. We had a draw with them first opening game of the season. They were a good outfit, so we're not expecting an easy fixture. We should be largely unchanged from last week, albeit we probably have 4 or 5 guys who are getting assessments on injuries and knocks after what was that really physical game. However, certainly first indications are that they should all be available. So all in all, we want to go up there. We want to play rugby. We want the guys to enjoy what they're doing. We need to always bear in mind it's an amateur sport. The guys and coaches give up a lot of time, and obviously the officials on a match day, all that type of thing. And really, you shouldn't be doing that if you're not enjoying it. So we're still trying to, just keep emphasising that to the guys, that albeit there is a bit of pressure there, and, we are kind of fighting to get that first win, but ultimately we want to see them playing with a smile on their faces and playing the type of rugby, that they actually enjoy, and not being limited by the pressure of league positions. So fairly positive in terms of where we are. Just really looking forward, to hopefully all these things coming together on a Saturday and getting the W that the guys deserve for all the work that they're putting in.
So this one's set up to be a very, very important match for both sides.
Yeah, this is a big game for both of these sides. And, I was speaking about the game last weekend with Biggar and the ramifications of that result could have had on, certainly on Biggar. But this one, Stuart's Melville have a chance to put a bit of daylight between these two sides. Berwick had, I've almost been unlucky in some of the games that they've had this season. Not hit the heights that perhaps we did expect of them. Lost some personnel, so it's always going to have an impact, but you would imagine that they need to get something from this game. If they do suffer defeat, they need to pick up a couple of points, to try and keep pressure on, because they're going to have opportunities to pick up victories before the end of the season, but against your near rivals, it's the same story. You need to try and maximise your points that you can go away with from a nearest rival, especially away from home. But Berwick are, again, yet to pick up a victory, so it's a big game. Pressure, I would say, for rarely, I think, for the away side in a relegation battle, you've always got the pressure off because it's on the home side. I think it's on Berwick here because they've not picked up a victory yet, and Stuart's Melville will be wanting to try and get a bit of distance between them.
Well, Rugby Radio on Saturday is actually coming from Inverleith for that 2 p.m. kick-off, and we'll be there before we hand over for live commentary to Mansfield Park for Hawick against Marr. But plenty of eyes on this one, and always a pleasure to go to the old Scotland ground at Inverleith. Don't forget, we're on air at 1:30 all the way through till 5 o'clock. Stirling County against Aberdeen Grammar. Let's find out what Stirling head coach Craig Deakins has to say this week about this one.
We can't be gifting teams easy scores. It's a bit of a common theme at the moment. Conceding soft tries off nothing, really. It's not as even as consistent pressure from the opposition. These unforced errors that we're doing, we really need to make sure we're reducing them. Because we turn it over, but we are scoring points. We're scoring more than enough points, I believe, to be winning games. But it's our defence at the moment that's really leaking some tries. There's a couple of changes to our team this weekend against Aberdeen. Mickey Keston, our 17-year-old tight head prop, who's played out absolutely outstanding for the last couple of weeks, is going back down to play for our under-18s in the cup game against GHA. But George Radcliffe's coming back in from injury, so he'll be shoring up the tight head spot for us this weekend, which is really good. There might be a couple other changes in the backs. We're just looking at some injury protocol stuff at the moment and see how these guys are going to pull through. However, it should be pretty much a consistent team from the team that went out against Newton Stewart the week before. Looking at the Aberdeen game this weekend, they're a team that's below us in the table. We need to make sure come the end of the game on Saturday that they're below us. These basement battles, we need to make sure we're coming out on top of them ones. It is really frustrating at the moment because we've played Lasswade and Newton Stewart. These teams are picking up some good points. So Lasswade sitting second in the table. These games, for me, they're all winnable. The Falkirk game 3 weeks ago was winnable. We just didn't fire enough shots. We're conceding some soft, silly tries, and the message from our players at the moment is, if we can stop these silly tries that we're conceding, we're really going to be challenging, and especially in this league. The teams we've seen now, we've met this is at the halfway mark. Everyone we've played, bar maybe a couple of teams that I would probably say were a lot better than us. Every team is pretty much able to beat everyone on this table. So I think it's going to be a really exciting second half to the season. No weeks are easy games. Like Aberdeen come down this weekend, they're a team that I know they've only won once this season so far, but that means absolutely nothing. They're going to be coming down here fighting for their lives. They'll be wanting to pull us into the basement battle more. We're wanting to obviously stretch away. So, as I say, come the end of the game on Saturday, as long as we've got the win this weekend, I'm going to be happy.
So Aberdeen know how to score points, try bonuses in half their games this season. Stirling 3 wins from 9.
Yeah, it's years gone by, we've seen Stirling County against Aberdeen Grammar, in the top reaches of Scottish Club Rugby, but now the sediment settles on a bit of everything that's went on over the last kind of decade. Both sides find themselves in National 2, and this is a game towards the foot of the table. You've got to say that Stirling County aren't settled yet, so it's another chance for them to pick up some points and just breathe a little bit more comfortably in this division. But again, it's Aberdeen. They've played well in some games and just come off second best, in tight encounters. Obviously can score points, but you've got to look at some of those games at the foot of the table and think that out of those 4 teams there could be one big loser come the end of the weekend. And unfortunately my eyes are starting to look at Berwick, because if Aberdeen are able to pick up a victory on the road and Stuart's Melville win, then there's a gap between those sides at the foot of the table. But again, that's the intrigue of it, the fact that we don't know what the results are going to be. Aberdeen don't go into that game at Bridgehaw as favourites at all. It's going to be a competitive game, but the 4 teams at the bottom of that table are certainly meeting each other this weekend, and it's going to be interesting, the foot of the table.
National 3 results from last week. Boroughmuir 27, Allan Glens 32, Hillhead Jordanhill 38, Hamilton 14, Orkney 36, Cartha Queen's Park 10, Preston Lodge 89, Dumfries 0, and West of Scotland 32, Howe Fife 38. So a predictable bunch of scorelines from last week. The top 5 all winning against the 5 teams in the lower half. That means Orkney remain unbeaten with a game in hand on leaders Preston Lodge, who had a thumping win against Dumfries, while Hamilton, despite their 9 bonus points, still without a win, and in the past couple of weeks they've been off the pace really, haven't they?
Yeah, I think, obviously Hamilton are in almost the same predicament as Berwick. They're still within touching distance, but they're at the foot of the table, yet to pick up a victory at all this season, and you're now at the halfway point, so you've met everybody once, and they'll certainly be looking at some of the games that have passed them by and targeting them for the second half of the season, because there'll be some games in there that they'll want to try and focus on at home. So a big turnaround in the second half of the season for Hamilton, but it's equally as competitive at the bottom again.
Preston Lodge at the top of the table then played 9-1-8, 40 points. Orkney played 1 game less. They've won all their 8 games, 37. Allan Glens 35, Howe Fife 33, Hillhead Jordanhill 28, Boroughmuir 24. Then a big gap to West of Scotland in 7th place. They're on 14. Cartha Queen's Park in 8th have 12. Dumfries in 9th place also have 12, and Hamilton, despite 5 try bonuses and 4 losing bonuses, that's all they've got, no wins, 9 points at the bottom of the table.
Yeah, as I say, you've got another league that you've got 4 teams at the bottom. They could intertwine before the end of the season, and it's whoever's going to be at the bottom after 18 games. But I think the story at the top of the table's equally as interesting. You've got a few teams in there that can certainly still get promoted. Orkney have a chance to go top at some point because they've got that game in hand. But you look at the points difference. Preston Lodge have been in really good form, creating a lot of, in their games they've been scoring a lot of points and really putting teams to the sword. Orkney, on the other hand, have been winning their narrow games. Their points difference isn't huge, but they've been winning those narrow games, and sometimes that's just the habit which is difficult to break. So 8 games gone, 8 games undefeated. It's looking good for Orkney, and I just think the story of that's phenomenal. Come the end of the season, it's going to be really intriguing to see where they end up.
Well, this week it's Boroughmuir against Dumfries, Hamilton against Howe Fife, Hillhead Jordanhill v Allan Glens, Orkney against West of Scotland, and Preston Lodge versus Cartha Queen's Park. So like last week, it should be fairly straightforward for Boroughmuir, Howe Fife, Orkney and Preston Lodge. But the interesting one here, I think, is Hillhead Jordanhill against Allan Glens, because they met on day 1, a narrow 10-7 win for Allan Glens.
Obviously, Allan Glens, the winds came out their sails a little bit after being defeated by Preston Lodge a couple of weeks ago. They obviously snuck by Boroughmuir on the road last weekend, so they've obviously been able to get back and react and get that victory. But you would say this game against Hillhead Jordanhill will have a big part to play in the kind of promotion race in this division.
In National 4, last week's results: Dunfermline 14, Garnock 46, Murrayfield Wanderers 14, Stuart 69, Perthshire 27, North Berwick 30, Ross High 29, Greenock Wanderers 35, and Whitecraigs 22, Strathmore 29. So the league table in National 4, Garnock at the top, unbeaten, but also with all try bonuses, 265 points difference as well. They're way ahead on 40 points. They can't do any better than that. Second, Whitecraigs, who have lost 3 of their games. They're on 31. Strathmore have 27 with 2 games in hand. Stuartry have 24. North Berwick in 5th spot on 23. They had 3 points docked. Dunfermline 21. Greenock Wanderers 19. Murrayfield Wanderers 17. Ross High 11. And Perthshire now go to the bottom of the table. They're on 10.
Yeah, another big weekend in National 4, and obviously Ross High not being able to get that victory against Greenock. It was close, but just not able to pick up that victory, which would have certainly helped them, but obviously able to pick up a couple of points there. So at the foot of the table, Perthshire, who suffered a narrow defeat as well, so it shows you it's competitive at the foot of the table, and at the top, Garnock are on a roll, certainly in National 4.
Well, this week in National 4, it's Dunfermline against North Berwick, 6th against 5th. That could be pretty close. Perthshire versus Murrayfield Wanderers, 10th against 8th. Perthshire should have an easier time of things this week at home against a team just above them. Ross High against Garnock, 9th against 1st. Well, it looks like 9 out of 9 for Garnock, unless Ross High can spring a major surprise. Strathmore v Stewartry, 3rd v 4th. Strathmore 2 games in hand on Stewartry. And White Craigs against Greenock Wanderers, 2nd against 7th.
That's my job's done. You've done all the predictions there, so that's great. But yeah, I don't disagree with you. I think you look at some of those fixtures there, especially Garnock away to Ross High, all 2 o'clock kickoffs as well in National 4. So I think the Garnock result is almost a foregone conclusion. You know, they've just been in that sort of form so far this season. But you know, Strathmore against Stewartry, that's an interesting fixture in National 4 because Stewartry were able to pick up a big victory last weekend, and they're just sitting beside each other on the table. So certainly an intriguing game in National 4, but you would imagine that Garnock are going to stretch their lead at the top.
Well, that's it for today on the Scottish Club Rugby podcast. Don't forget Rugby Radio on Saturday, coming to you from Inverleith, keeping an eye on Stumel v Berwick and that critical game at the bottom of National 2. Live commentary, though, at the top of the table, clash at Mansfield Park, Hawick and Marr in the Premiership. We start at 1:30. We'll be on air for 3.5 hours with score updates throughout the afternoon. There'll be television highlights on Borders Rugby TV of Hawick versus Marr on Sunday, and check out our website at rugbyradio.co.uk for the information you need on all 50 clubs playing national rugby in Scotland this season. If you want to get in touch, it's podcast at bordersrugby.net. But from Dale Clancy and myself, bye for now.